hard to get through the rain. Even when the skies are gray, you're always there to show the way, telling me things I need to hear. A gentle hand but a firm command. You've taught me lessons to succeed. Shed your wisdom, we all need. You've been my strength as well as my friend, inspiring me every now and then to reach for my hopes and dreams that seemed so far away. I look up to you for all that you are, a guiding light through the dark of night. You let me see what I can be. Thank you for believing in me. Foster the fire that burns inside and yearns to grow. Courage is all it takes, a journey we can make to touch the hearts who struggle every day. You've been my strength, inspiring me every day to reach for my hopes and dreams that seem so far. I look up to you for all that you are, a guiding light through the dark of night. You let me see what I can be. For all the lives you change, I thank you for believing in me.
For the realization of one of our new administration's 7-point agenda, specifically the yearn for excellence in teaching and learning. It is the aim of the center to be an enabling hub for achieving institutional goals and to manage as well as supervise the introduction and implementation of new pedagogies and start building the innovative teaching and learning ecosystems to produce quality graduates that are not only educated to support and work in an industry or company, but also educated to become innovative entrepreneurs, innovators, and leaders. It is the mission of CITL to be a faculty support that will facilitate the integration of the innovative framework or paradigm, such as the CDIO or the Conceive, Design, Implement, Operate, and also the integration of the design thinking in the academic programs. It is also the goal of the center to provide a venue where effective educational strategies, best teaching evidence-based practices, and pedagogy are shared among faculty members. Furthermore, the center facilitates the design of the courses or programs to sustain and promote the teaching of innovation, so our students are provided with a learning environment where creativity thrives and innovative minds are encouraged and developed.
If teachers and students will work together, that can create a better learning experience.
Kinahanglan yun nga atong mga students is kabalo sila mo troubleshoot or
to be tactful. Yes, at my end, I would be telling them, of course, note the proper use of words.
Giving ourselves a time no, to better serve these students.
Yeah, we teach the way we were taught.
Importance of this forum, teachers and students exchange ideas. The student itself will feel that they are important. Atong estudyante, they feel that they are being cared.
This is what Amatol has to offer. So, nag-focus po that po sa kung unsa itong mga critical nga mga skill nga dapat matunan nila once musulod, before sila musulod sa trabaho.
We need to know the scope of the course at the same time that I grasp academic performance when their performance in the platform use. The tactful feedbacking, of course, basically I use listening, understanding the students' concerns, feedbacking.
When we say unloading the weight, that's removing negativity from ourselves. So we need to give ourselves time. Live the life you love.
Pero may ginako na ginaingon. And if you are committed to something, you have to do your best. Mo ginako, diba? Isa sa mga linya nga akong mga na-message or na-chat or kastori na akong mga estudyante and teach your students regularly and just simply ask them, kumusta? May virtual kumustahan tayo and feedbacking. So I remind myself to always have time to ask my students. Just connect with them.
specific pedagogical areas to influence instructors and professors towards augmenting and innovating their instructions, and to incorporate and implement the practices and ideas in class to educate the learners in best ways possible. On behalf of our director, Dr. Ampi V. Dinagsao, I welcome you all for today's event. Thank you very much.
A few days ago, I met a former student who is now working as a laboratory technician for the electrical engineering department in this university. He was in charge of the laboratory room where I would have my scheduled synchronous online classes. While setting up for my class, I noticed him preparing for his online class as well. He's given a teaching load in USTP-CiTL. So I took the chance to ask him what made him decide to teach in college. I was caught off guard when he told me that he was inspired to pursue a teaching career because of me. According to him, I made a difference in his student life because of the impact brought about by the experiences they had in my class. He added that he still carries with him the motto I taught them back, which I also happen to teach my students at present, to quote unquote, leave no man behind. That line is meant to encourage my students to look after one another so that optimal learning can be achieved. When they feel they have people around to encourage and support them along the journey of studying. These are crucial moments in our classes where student interactions play a vital role in their university life. Richard Kerwin, in his 2017 blog post in Edutopia titled 5 Ways to Make Class Discussions More Exciting, said that it's not enough for students to simply pay attention. They need to be active participants to generate one of those great discussions that end far too quickly for both the teacher and the students. The worst types of discussions are serial one-on-one talk between a student and teacher, leaving the rest of the class out of the process. Many students stop listening, begin to fade or disengage during this flawed procedure. Before the pandemic, when classes were still physically done on campus, part of my classroom activities was to build group dynamics. I remember facilitating activities inside the classroom such as quiz bees, educational games, performance tasks, and even doing activities outdoors within the campus premises. When the pandemic started and we were left with no choice but to transition to online classes, I was already thinking about how I could initiate student interactions despite the limitations and distance, especially in synchronous sessions. So this is what I would do. For my particular class in electromagnetics, I spent the first 5 to 10 minutes grouping the students in the breakout rooms and allowing them to check on one another and do some kumustahan. Nearly 3 years into a global pandemic, many of our students are dealing with intense anxiety and depression under the pressures of isolation and surviving online classes, prompting psychology experts to urge people to check in with friends and family regularly. All of it has given the phrase, "How are you doing?" or simply "Kumusta bay?" a more important placement in our daily dialogue, says Vanderbilt University psychology professor Craig Smith. Aside from those studies, what prompted me to incorporate short virtual kumustahan in my classes was that some students would actually message me and tell me their struggles. Most of their problems would point to finding balance between giving their best in their online classes but still being able to handle those problematic households or handling family and societal pressures. Some of them also get into class while working on the side to earn money to survive our current crisis. These things affect our learners' mental health and make them less participative in the classes. Some even would contemplate committing to ending their lives. According to Laura Salmi from Laurea University of Applied Sciences in Finland, interaction and community building are essential elements of a well-functioning online learning environment, especially in learning environments based on investigative learning with a strong emphasis on teamwork. A sense of community and social presence has been widely acknowledged to enhance the quality of education and the motivation to study. So after the quick kumustahan, I would then proceed to the presentation of the discussion's flow and setting expectations for the session. After the brief introduction, when the students already know what to expect in the class, I usually discuss the subject matter briefly, including the theory and sample problems. To avoid the common mistake of monopolizing the talk time, every once in a while, I also see to it that there must be an engagement taking place among my students. I do this by asking them critical, meaningful, and contextualized questions and doing energy checks along the way. In between discussions, I also insert quick games to excite the students and have them learn some concepts in a fun way to break the ice. I usually give prizes for the games or extra points for recitation. For example, I converted a problem-solving activity into a game in one class I'm teaching, engineering mathematics. Each matrix answer is equivalent to a specific letter from a word. And these words are particular items found in the house. It is basically like solve me and bring me with a twist. A complete answer would be equivalent to anything found in the house. Let's say, for example, the word baso or drinking glass in English. It would then become a race to bring a baso or a glass or any item, so students would show them to the camera. I also created games for those who cannot turn on their cameras, and even those just watching the class through the FB live stream in our closed group. According to the UMass Amherst Center for Teaching and Faculty Development on the pedagogy of games, we can utilize frequently asked questions, goals, rules, challenges, and interactions to spark engagement in class and make it easier for our learners to achieve their learning outcomes. It can help us, educators, facilitate the establishment of learners' emotional connection to learning and the subject matters, provide opportunities for feedback and practice, and have the chance to customize our instruction to individualize teaching. In most instances, I break the students into smaller groups through the breakout room options in the Zoom or Google Meet. I usually give them problem or questions they need to answer as a team, and each must have contributed to the solution. I then jump from one breakout room to another from time to time to check their process and see what is actually happening during the exchange of ideas. After the breakout room discussions, all students will return to the plenary hall to present their respective groups' processes towards arriving at their answers. There have been many opportunities for students to interact with their instructors and peers in the traditional classroom setup. And we know that this interaction is critical to student success. So why would we think social interaction would be any less vital in an online course? Several studies have already proven the power of social interaction, even this time of online learning, to pick students' engagements and motivation and help improve their academic aptitude. As educators, we are responsible for designing the teaching and learning environment, wherein we consider creating opportunities for meaningful and sustained social interactions, whether in face-to-face or online classes. Now that many students are taking multiple online courses for self and professional development, while balancing their studies with home and work responsibilities, we go back to empathy and think about how we could make learning worthwhile for them. We make it a point when they get into our class, the experience and lessons we provide them will become indispensable pieces of knowledge. Going back to my story earlier about my encounter with a former student, whether in physical classroom or an online setting, we consider the value of inclusive education in planning our instruction. We have this moral duty to ensure that no student feel like we have neglected them. Again, leave no man behind. Student interactions and discussions are imperative parts of pedagogy, and they are great ways to bring each of our students along where the whole class is going. Apart from that, it strengthens their connections with their peers and us. While it is one of the best approaches to tell if our students are with us on the same page. With the current situation, we are slowly moving towards coming together again physically after years of being isolated. What drives us to do this is our need for real human interaction, not mediated with technology, because learning in an actual environment allows us to sense everything. It is then learning becomes an experience. Although the pandemic has changed the landscape of education, there are just things in teaching and learning we cannot replace. We cannot yet be sure of what the future may hold. But what is certain is regardless of setting, be it inside the school or outside the school, learning is a force that brings us together to help us realize the importance of not leaving a man behind in life. Good afternoon. Thank you for listening.
I have been teaching a course on workshop theory and practice, which deals with the basic principles of machine shop practices. So the lessons include workshop safety, hand tools, fitting bins work, just to name a few. So in a regular class, this could have been a lot easier and convenient given that we have laboratories available in the universities. So, but now that we have to survive through a pandemic, everything changed in the way we do things, including on the way we deliver our instructions. Perhaps for others, the pandemic is the dead end. But in my case, it opened an opportunity to rediscover the possibilities on how I assess my students' development and skills. For the first activity I have in class, I tasked my students to make safety slogan intended for workshop. So for face-to-face classes, they would have just submitted all their slogans individually, and I would have posted their slogans inside the workshop. So, but since they're at home, so they will just have to submit outputs online. So for authenticity purposes, I asked my student to take a photo of them holding the slogan. Okay. So a side note, my other purpose of the photos with them holding their projects is to see their faces. It's because they hardly showed up during online classes. So in this way, I could recognize them if face-to-face will be implemented back once the pandemic is done. Okay. I showed them examples finished work during our online classes. Okay. Okay, such as this. Okay, so show them the examples. So I made this finished work during online classes. So the reasons why I am showing my student those photos is because I want them to realize that they can still achieve the task. So, and ultimately, the learning outcomes even when they are learning remotely. So what I learned is that the successful conduct of laboratory courses is highly dependent on our resourcefulness. And this is when our ability to assess students' knowledge and skills through replications and simulations of laboratory processes into our student context plays an important role. So in an article published in Forbes last 2020, Natalie Wexler, a senior editor for education, said that remote instruction requires a lot of the same things any normal instruction does, such as clarity, review, checking for understanding from feedback. But distance adds additional challenges. So this is where creativity and adaptability comes into play. Maybe it is true after all that limitations make us more creative individuals. And because there is a limitations in the resources, we involve our students into the task of scavenging and using of different tools at home, but still be able to apply the principles and processes learned from the lessons. So here are my students in their output. Okay? Okay. Okay, so here it is. Okay, so there's their output. Okay. So in other class, okay, I am teaching machine shop theory to second year mechanical engineering students. So the course deals with the use and operations of machines such as lathe machines, shapers, planers, drilling, and boring machines, and other tools and accessories. It covers technological advances in mechanical and metal working and new innovations in machine shop. And what I have looked forward to for my students is that they be able to acquire skills in different machining operations and to understand the technological advances in metalworking industry. Okay, in school, they were allowed to study and operate the machine during their laboratory time. So I had to limit the time due to their numbers, that is 40 students against 2 functioning lathe machine, not to mention that all other colleges are also using them. So but now I tasked them to study the components and how the machine would operate. I did not stop there. I also had them to create their own DIY lathe machine using materials that they have at home. So and I was floored by what my students have able to produce. Okay? Okay. So before all of this we realized, I just reminded my students to think of a project or setup that has same functions of a lathe machine. Then maybe make a working drawing of the project. They make a step-by-step procedures on how the project is made, and make a do-it-yourself or DIY project of lathe machine using any material equipment found or available in the respective places or surrounding. Okay, then make another project made of softwood using their mini lathe machine. Then take a photo holding or operating the said project. Okay. So, but most importantly, I told them to be creative. Okay. So here are the photos, other DIY projects I had assigned. Okay. Okay. Assigned to my students. Okay. So this DIY that functions as a drilling press or machine, which can be drilling operations on any machines, which has the provision of rotating the workpiece or the tool like lathe machine or milling machine. Okay. For the post drill, they had made also the following. Okay. So post drill. Okay, wherein they're able to made it at home. Okay. So another task is to make a DIY functions as a milling machine. Okay. So what's a milling machine? Okay. So which removes the material from the workpiece by feeding the fast rotating multi uh, multi-point cutter. Okay, so what inspired me to plan this for my students? I learned about experiential learning theory by David Kolb. So the theory simply tells us that the students learn more when they are learning by doing. So, okay, Kolb's theory is one of the widely used learning models in the field of education. Okay. So by simply having the machines replicated, okay, by my students, they are able to understand how the machine works through its different components. So they're also able to manipulate the machines they made to see it works for creating other output. Okay, so this time they are not just operators or of the machines, but are also innovators of the machines. Instead of me having to explain each machine's components and operations in a long and dragging lecture, I let them immerse and actualize the principles and tangible product into tangible products. So they discovered on their own what works, what doesn't work, and what to do about what they have. Okay. In a study by Hoffman in 2012, it stated that when we tap into our students' innovative capabilities, we are developing their survival skill for the evolutions of mankind. We give them the gift of sustainable future. So it is the same as asking this question when we are assessing our students. Are my students ready for the future? Okay. Are my students skilled enough that they'd be able to contribute to society after they graduate from the university? But all of these things don't have to start with rocket science. It can just start from the scrap metals, appliances, and other materials they have at home. Let us teach our learners to become resourceful innovators. And when we assess, let us not settle with what students can say. Let us check on what students can do. Thank you for listening. Good afternoon.
Students of these generations have very short attention spans, and it could be challenging for instructors and learning facilitators to sustain the class focus and attention to our discussions. Furthermore, with the current situation wherein our students learn from their own homes, many distractions keep them away from learning. They would rather spend time browsing social media or viewing TikTok videos instead of opening their lecture notes and our video lectures. But why is this happening? Is it simply because they are bored with how we teach them? Or maybe the more profound answers lie in the kind of generation they are born with. A study shows that several academic institutions have reduced their lectures to 15 minutes in length due to a decline in students' attention based on the research conducted by Neil A. Bradbury in 2016. Interestingly, the most consistent finding from a literature review is that the most significant variability in student attention arises from differences between teachers and not from the teaching format itself. Therefore, we need to improvise or recreate our teaching methods and approaches to keep our students interested in our discussion. That is just one of the many teaching goals, keeping our students at their toes for more. But how do we do this? First is we need to understand that the kind of students we have and where they are coming from, so we know what engages them. we have to realize that our students are born in an era when technology is flourished. All they, all they ever grew up with is a constant evolution of technologies we didn't even experience in the past, which makes a lot of sense in how they consume technology and deal with information and learning. For these 21st century learners, the traditional way of teaching, where the teacher is the primary bearer of knowledge, is obsolete, uninspiring, and lackluster. As educators, we have to be observant and quick enough to adapt to the changes of times. Have you ever noticed younger people nowadays? Their approach to learning is direct, fast-paced, and concise. As much as possible, they want to avoid dragging discussions unless the conversations involve personal experiences. The information they are learning from is presented in short videos with crisp details or in infographics with eye-catching designs. Also, they love to be in groups where they feel they could relate and exchange ideas with. They seem to have adopted to a kind of learning that comes from with an element of entertainment, and they constantly crave interaction to learn together. The next step I do in class is to group them based on their performance in my course, because I want to group those who have weak performances to those who excel. The essence of this grouping scheme is to foster inclusivity among the learners. I always believe that no one should be left behind in learning. Several pieces of literature since the 90s until now have already established that students who work in cooperative groups do better on tasks, especially reasonings and critical thinking skills, than those who don't. To spark interaction among my students, the next step I do is take advantage of my students' technological knowledge. For my classes, I use the Google Workspace ecosystems, as these tools are free and accessible to the student at no cost. One good thing about these tools is that they are interoperable, meaning that one tool is solely connected to the other. Hence, the data can be integrated into the other system. In an article posted in Kennedy Center on their website, online tools and resources in conjunction with best teaching practices opens up opportunities for sharing, editing, collaborating, adapting, and converting student resources. Moreover, I gave activities to my classes via Google Docs, where they could collaboratively work on a single page together. They can see each other's work while the teacher continuously monitors their work in real time. In a study conducted on harnessing the power of emergent interdependence by Caruso and Woolley in 2008, it was concluded that activity-based learning is essential for stimulating learners' social creativity, and absorption of knowledge from their peers would be much faster. Group tasks and projects that we give our students can help students develop a host of skills that are interestingly important in the professional world. Moreover, positive group experiences have been shown to contribute to students' learning, retention, and overall college success. According to the National Survey of Student Engagement in its 2006 findings. What I appreciate so much about students' interaction and engagement with activities is that it is a subconscious practice that promotes social responsibility. This develops the needed negotiation, communication, and management skills to help them become great team players. Although the spirit of a team is working together, there is also a development of the sense of accountability. We want to promote independence in classes, but also like to remind them that more hands make for lighter work. We say two heads are better than one, or the more the merrier, which are adages that speak to potential groups to be more productive, creative, and motivated individuals on their own. All these things may be common practices in most classes, now that we have transitioned to flexible learning. But what we should not leave out in all the preparation we do in class is opportunities for our students to engage, relate, and collaborate. In a nutshell, we cannot expect our students to engage in their own. Rather, we facilitate this learning experience to take place in class. When our class becomes an experience, our student will get excited for class. To them, our classes become a comfortable learning environment. Thank you for listening and good afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, a happy good afternoon to all. Yes, we were challenged, but this afternoon proves that we were not defeated, that no pandemic could stop us from becoming trailblazers in innovative teaching and learning.
Of the USTP community, and thank you for your outstanding performance and for upholding the USTP's attitude of excellence.
It's been 2 years since we have had online classes. We, as educators, find ourselves in situations where we need to be connected with our students, away from the comforts of our classrooms. We suddenly find ourselves venturing for the best possible teaching methods we could possibly apply for our classes. And there have been a lot of doubts twirling in the back of our minds. Whether the things that we are applying in class would be beneficial to our clients, our dear students. However, despite these apprehensions, our pursuit for teaching and learning transform these challenges and limitations that fuels our eagerness and aim to give our students the best, no matter what it takes, no matter what situation we are into. And this is all true to me as teacher of mathematics. Since the flexible learning, I thought I had to change things. I realized that I can no longer stay on the same ground in terms of the strategic approaches and techniques I had when we were still teaching face-to-face. The changes I did in my pedagogy for the spirit of learning is that I I let my students understand the need for pacing one's learning. Now that students are learning online, wherein connectivity is always a challenge, and environments at home may not be conducive for studying, I let my students pace themselves to take the lessons in. But the most important change I have done so far must be encouraging my students to collaboratively solve problems through discourse, instead of being on their own, memorizing answers. I read in a study conducted in 2006 by lead researchers Vichers Fishers on collaborative learning that says, collaborative learning promotes deep learning in which students engage in high quality social interaction, even when discussing contradictory information. Through this, students are able to access their thoughts, learn to negotiate and compromise, and of course, learn that there are other perspectives that coexist with theirs. And because the classes are conducted online, we also have to make sure that we are selecting the right tools. I use tools that compel students to collaborate with one another. This is part of instructional planning and design. Actually, according to Steger, in his research in 2016, there are 8 factors found to have a positive effect on the effectiveness of collaboration. The first 4 sets are related generally to design factors, of course, and or on the assignments. This includes the autonomy of students, task characteristics, teachers' expectations, and group size. And of course, the second set, which is all about process factors and the way students interact with and organize with their works, include team and task regulation, interdependence, promotive interaction, and mutual support and motivation. All of these factors are components to a recipe that make collaboration a valuable or meaningful activity for our learners. The way I practice autonomy is this. Different questions will be given to each group, and students in the group are given freedom on what approach such problem by discussing among members on the methods, style, and process to solve that specific problem. Normally, they would create their group chats where they communicate among members. This first step becomes the birth of collaboration. In the light of task characteristics, this is just integral to the requirements I ask them. What they need to have in their works so that I would consider their output as standard are basically related to my expectations or the teacher's expectations facet. Here in USTP, we have an average of 40 students in a class. I usually divide classes in 8 groups of 5 members each. In an article posted in Classroom Research, it is encouraged that there will only be 3 to 5 students per group to maximize efficacy. After the given time, depending upon the question, whether it is easy, medium, or hard questions, all of them must submit their outputs to secure their slot order for preparation. Depending on which group is presenting, the remaining groups will act as panelists. And these people are given the liberty to give constructive feedback to the outputs or the answer with respect to the concept of the lessons. I observed that what motivates the students to interact and encourage or even engaged is the idea that they are given the chance to be heard. not only through this presentation, but also when they act as panelists. Task and team regulation happens when somebody from the team conducts an orientation on the task, conduct monitoring of the task, and evaluation of the task belonging to specific members. Mutual support and motivation is part of collaboration that sustains the members until the group finally achieved the task at hand. This component takes place when everybody in the team is reminded of the goal and the benefits they will all get when they work together. For positive interaction, this happens when the team exercise cooperative relationships, and when that relationship result in better growth, survival, and of course success. In the words of Johnson in 2009, during these processes, positive interdependence is present, supporting further the notion that positive interdependence is a crucial factor affecting the effectiveness of collaboration. Moreover, in a research by Chai and Brady in 2010 on cooperative learning, it was found that the degree of active participation of university students in collaborative groups are affected by importance they attach to grades. Students who perceived grades as highly important were more active collaborators. Over the last decades, research has demonstrated that collaborative learning can promote academic and social educational outcome, let alone interaction and engagement. However, research also shows that the implementation of groupings to supposedly spark interaction was not always adequate during implementation, because even though teachers organize different types of student groupings, there have been teachers who failed to facilitate group interactions to foster effective collaboration. This then leads to low quality coordination among group members, or group members do not pay attention to others' opinions, or students tend to interrupt other students and sometimes would reject alternative suggestion without justification. This inappropriate behavior inhibited group functioning and individual learning, but most of this are caused by poor planning and complacency. So you see, for us to have our students engage in our class, we need to envision our activity when we plan them. This is when where most of the challenges comes from when designing collaborative activities. It is us learning to be a student. So we will be able to empathize with our learners. Thank you for listening and good afternoon.
Example of how I usually start my hydrology class. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to your hydrology class for the day. For today, we will talk about precipitation. Yes, I do talk about precipitation or rainfall in an engineering course. Oftentimes, I talk about rainfall when it's actually raining outside. It's a real-world application right there and then. I then go through different terms and equations that are essential for understanding the basics of this hydrologic process. But I am not sure if you have noticed this. From what I have just shared, in my class, I talk. This might not be an optimal setting for everyone in the class, but I do the talking. But only at first. I just wanted to present the theories to the students so that all of us will start from the same cloud. Just joking, from the same ground. And in less than an hour, I make sure that I finish talking. I then hand over the mic, the floor, or the screen to my students. It's now their chance to talk. For a 2-unit lecture course, I only take half of the time for the actual lecture and spend the other half of the time to a platform called an online forum. A forum is a feature that most teaching and learning management systems have, where students can exchange their ideas and learn from one another. What makes this an activity that I look forward to is the thought that my lesson will be contextualized according to my students' real-life experiences. Forums just opened windows for me to contextualize my assessment. In 2015, Taiwan National Normal University conducted a study on contextualized assessment. The researchers found that when students are immersed in assessments that allow them to use their experiences, students tend to employ diverse cognitive processes to understand various components of an event, especially when the event is tied to a complex environmental process, such as precipitation. True enough, this is what I also observed in my students' responses. When we ask students questions that bring them back to an experience, they will look at the experience from a different perspective. And this time, it will allow them to use their knowledge to make better decisions and solutions to problems. They go back to these recurring societal issues and become better engineers and problem solvers who may put an end to these drawbacks and inefficiencies, hopefully. As simple as a forum, students imagine how things would work in their minds. Although it is not an actual demonstration of skills, it is an excellent way for us to see how students break down and understand how components of a system work together in a process. In my case, I use the forum feature in USTP. For one lesson, I post 3 different but relevant topics, each containing a short video for the students to first watch, followed by an open-ended question that the students can freely respond to. My only requirement is for them to join in at least 2 of these forum threads and to observe proper netiquette. The video component is integral for my assessment. In another literature in 2015 published by SAGE, lead researcher Charmichael stated that videos could reduce the cognitive load on the students, especially for those in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This allows the learners to easily make sense of things through mental animation. For example, one of the topics I posted under our forum on precipitation involves an animated video on how rainfall is forecasted. Now, engineering students may find this far-fetched from our specialization, but I make it a point that they understand why such lesson must be taken. But instead of having to give them a long lecture, I instead ask them questions. And through their answers, they will realize that they are already establishing that connection between the concepts of my subjects into their chosen program. My question include, personally, how do weather forecasts affect your day-to-day life? Or do we even check weather forecasts now? Or as future engineers, in what way are we going to use weather forecasts as a tool for realizing our projects? These questions I crafted are designed in a way that will lead my students to responses worth reflecting upon and discussing about. And this is the beauty of a forum. We open the venue for students to be less intimidated with sharing their ideas. From a literature review by Wang in 2019 on enhancing the quality of online discussion, it has been established that a forum is a critical platform in asynchronous learning for bringing our classes into high-level pedagogical outcomes. Students love to engage critical inquiry, articulate their thoughts, negotiate meanings, and socially construct knowledge. So instead of talking about how satellites move around the Earth and feed us with real-time data from space, from which we can predict cloud formations and rainfall patterns, I would rather have them watch the video and talk about these mechanisms to see if they comprehended the lesson. A well-coordinated forum could promote learning and sharing perspectives and information. Albeit certain lapses on my end, specifically on the monitoring department, this can still count as a good start, right? A raindrop for a series of ripples, positive ripples. Good afternoon and thank you for listening.